Vincent, beautiful ball. Nicholas!
Higuain!
Acosta, Ariola, it's in the net!
Can these teams compete with the best in the East? We will find out soon enough. MLS is back. We are just 2 days away from opening weekend. And on tap for today, we are talking Red Bulls, Chicago Fire, Columbus, and DC. We are rounding out the Eastern Conference. Hello and welcome to the 2018 MLS season preview show every day at 3 p.m. Eastern. This week we are here on Facebook Live and our YouTube page. We are breaking down every single team, every major storyline. We've got you covered. And while you're on those pages, why don't you give us a little like and subscribe? We really appreciate that. I'm Susanna Collins. It is my pleasure to be joined by this fine-looking crew right here. We have our armchair analyst, Mr. Matt Doyle. We have former MLSer, current MLS contributor, Mr. Bobby Warshaw. And, of course, host of The Movement, my co-host of This Week in MLS.
Always good to see you.
Kaylin Carr. It's so good to see
yeah.
you guys. We're doing it, right? You know what else we're doing? You guys should join MLS Fantasy. Go to MLSsoccer.com/fantasy. We're doing it a little different this year. There's going to be 2 separate seasons, you guys, before All-Star and after. We're going to make it a little bit easier and more exciting. Cool prizes to win. You're joining.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm joining, obviously. And guys, you should download that MLS app. You can download that on the App Store and on Google Play. Highlights, analysis, great content from this crew. A lot of us, which who doesn't want that? And also, you guys, this weekend, it's opening weekend. So join us on Saturday and Sunday for Match Day Central. We're going to be doing some stuff from right here in our studios, analysis.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Stuff.
This is big for us. I mean, we've done a lot of playoff coverage, but this really is week in, week out. We're going to be here in the studio breaking down plays, analysis, highlights. It's going to be pretty cool.
It is going to be cool.
Big step for us.
We're excited. You guys, it's all happening. All right, so let's get to our news of the day. We're going to talk a little Champions League right now. FC Dallas, despite a come-from-behind 3-2 win against Toro FC in their second leg, they are out of CCL competition. They lose 3-3 on aggregate goals. This was not a pretty display for FC Dallas, and particularly Jesse Gonzalez, Matt Doyle.
Yeah, he was miserable in the first leg. He let in the only goal of that game. It was kind of a howler, and he was, I think, pretty at fault on the first goal in this one as well. And when you give up 2 soft goals, you tend to lose, and that's what happened to FC Dallas. This team, I mean, just 12 months ago, they were amongst the best in North America. They took Pachuca, who eventually won the damn thing. They took them right down to the wire, and the bottom has fallen out. I mean, it's a calamity.
12 months ago, we were talking about Oscar Pereira being potentially the next men's national team coach.
Yeah.
To his credit, he took fault for last night. He said, "This is on me." And I've been in locker rooms where the team just crumbles like this, and I don't even know where the manager starts. There are literally fires all over the place. One guy's tired, you need to motivate him. The other guy's just exhausted and out of it, you need to kind of put your hand on his back. One fire here, and it feels like you're always trying to play catch up once it gets this bad.
Make no mistake, Dallas needed to be able to advance against a team the side of Toro FC. They need to, and most MLS teams should. But the talk about this being sort of a reflection on the league poorly, I think that's overblown. I really do. Dallas is not one of the better teams in MLS. Same with Colorado. That's part of the problem with the parity in MLS, and part of the hope in Toronto FC, where 2 years out, they're still at the top of the table, still able to compete. And that matchup against Tigres, to me, you just got to push your chips on that one, because that's a better reflection of where MLS is right now.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to get more to Dallas tomorrow. On tomorrow's show, we're going to do a little more deep dive into FC Dallas. And also on tap for tonight, you guys, there's 2 more CCL matches. We have Seattle and the Red Bulls playing in their second leg. And speaking of the Red Bulls, we're going to get right into their season preview. A very interesting offseason once again for the Red Bulls. For the second year in a row, they ship out their captain. Last year it was Dax McCarty. This year, Sasha Kljestan.
Luis Robles on notice.
Woo! Some bold moves from Jesse Marsch. What do we make of this, Bobby Warshaw?
You're right with bold moves, and we're going to talk about the tactical implications, getting rid of Sasha in a few minutes. But the main thing I want to say is, as a leader of a team or of an organization, you have to have someone with a plan and just with the guts to make hard decisions, and Jesse shows both those. So the verdict's still out on what it means tactically to get rid of a guy like Sasha Kljestan, but just at the end of the day, at the head of your organization, if you're a Red Bulls fan, to have someone who's willing to make tough choices, tough decisions with authority, I give Jesse Marsch credit for that.
And their whole ethos has been better a year too early than a year too late. You don't want to hold on to a guy who's, I mean, Sasha's 32. He's a pro approaching
If
the
they
end.
had waited one more year and he had declined, then they would have been yelling at him anyway.
So I get it. It's a risk, though, Kalen.
Yeah, they get value. That's the most important part. They got value back, but when you look at the standings, they went from 1st to 6th last year. Made a run in the playoffs, of course, but they're mortgaging their future, building through the academy. But at some point, Red Bull New York fans are going to get a little impatient because they saw themselves just a couple years ago as Toronto FC in that mold of a club that could really compete for championships year in, year out. And now they've kind of taken a different approach here. I see them maybe near the bottom of the playoff picture to start off.
Well, let's take a look at some of the off-season roster moves for this Red Bulls team. Kaylin, you mentioned the value. They get Tommy Redding and Carlos Rivas for Sacha Kljestan, but that's a big loss right there. What do you think?
Sacha Kljestan, 37 goals over the last 2 seasons in MLS. Probably the best chance provider here in assists. But Kaku is the guy. Kaku is the guy. I mispronounced that last week and got stick for it in the comments. But he's the guy I think is going to be able to try and carry that load. Can play on the wing, tuck in, one-on-one, dynamic in the attack. And then Rivas. Got speed, didn't work out so well in Orlando, but a ton of talent there, going to be a nice weapon to have for Jesse Marsch.
All right, well, for more on this Red Bulls lineup, let's send it over to Bobby and Matt, who are standing by at the board.
Doyle, if I were to show everyone my notes right now, next to the Red Bulls formation, it would say, who knows, with multiple question marks. We have the 4-2-3-1 here, but you're not sure that's what they're going to play.
Yeah, I don't think it's multiple question marks. I think it's multiple options. And we've seen the 4-2-3-1 in preseason. We've seen the 3-3-3-1 that they used so well last year, would kind of gives a different look. And we've seen the 4-2-2-2, which is, of course, the apple of Red Bull Central's eye. And Jesse Marsch has tried that at the start of each of the last 3 seasons. And I think it's a level of flexibility that any coach would want. I mean, to me, that's what they've been aiming for.
And you're talking about flexibility in formations, but we know that the Red Bull style will stay the same.
Yeah.
They'll be energetic, they'll be high pressing. What that means is when we push up the field, it creates space behind the center backs, behind the defenders, leaves a lot of room for them to cover. Can these guys do it?
I think they're better equipped to do it this year than they were at the start of last year. First of all, because Aurelien Colon is back and he's healthy, but they have more depth, they have more youth, they have guys who can run. You know what Aaron Long is now. The question is, what is Tyler Adams? I think he's a fullback, but it looks like we're going to start to see him in central midfield for most of this year.
I'm stoked to see him at central midfield just because I'm interested to see how he progresses there. The big question with Tyler Adams is, can he get the ball in tight spaces? Can he get the ball in the half turn and play out of trouble? But Matt, we're not the only ones talking about Tyler Adams. He's a hot topic around American soccer circles right now.
First impressions, I was kind of blown away. I think he had no fear. After that, he can actually play the game.
Takes a bounce. Tyler Adams on it, drills it, goal! There it is for Tyler Adams' first goal in Major League Soccer.
He's the player who demands more out of his teammates than any 18-year-old I've ever seen in Major League Soccer.
You want him on your team because you know he's going to do whatever he can to win.
The ground he covers and the influence he has on the game is very impressive for someone his age.
Foul against Schweinsteiger. Tyler Adams wants no part.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Love a kid who's not willing to back down from anybody.
That's the way he thinks he's 6'7". He doesn't see anybody as, a threat.
He'll get the ball and he'll go at you.
Adams crossed up with Davis. His service and the game is tied.
But he's also a good defender, an engine and a half. So when you combine his athleticism with his mentality, he's a beast on the field.
Part of the line, man. Part of the line.
All right, gentlemen, prediction time. What do we think is the best and worst case scenario for this Red Bulls team in 2018? Kaylin.
Well, just first of all, I think Sean Davis is going to be in that starting lineup. He'll probably step in Mouille and then allow Royer to switch to the side and Kaku to go on the left side as well. But as far as top and bottom for this team, I don't think there's a huge gap, which in some ways is good and in some ways is not so good, because I think they're right near the bottom of that Eastern Conference, as I mentioned, playoff picture, 5-6 seed, and the bottom would be just on the other side of that. I do think they'll make the playoffs, but it's going to be close.
Bobby.
I like the way you put that, a small gap between their best and their worst, because most teams have a huge gap. I hate to be a victim of the moment, but that last Champions League game they played last week, they just looked unfit, they looked sluggish, and if you're unfit going to the first game of the season, it's hard to catch up, guys. It's hard to get that fitness once games are coming fast, so they'll be in the thick of the playoffs. if I had to pick right now, I'd say just out.
It needs to be understood they've been helpless the last 3 years without Sasha Kljestan. When he's not on the field, they haven't generated anything. But Kljestan's 32, Kaku is 23. This is the type of Kaku's not just some random replacement. They spent millions of dollars on him. So ideally, this is an upgrade. Ideally, they get more goals out of midfield. They're betting on the kids. I'm actually, I hate to say it, I am bullish on the Red Bulls.
Oh, no,
Kaku
you
fits the
didn't, Matt
system, maybe, too.
Doyle.
Kaku fits the system.
maybe
I think the
defensively,
Red
he's
Bulls
the
are
right guy.
definitely a playoff team. Yeah. They're younger, they're faster. I think they're going to be better.
All right, well, let's move on to the team who was knocked out of the playoffs last year at the hands of the Red Bulls. That is the Chicago Fire. They lose David Accam in the offseason. Bastian Schweinsteiger, though, re-signs, and this is a team that experienced quite the resurgence last year, coming up from the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. My question, though, is this year, have they done enough to compete with the Atlantas, the NYCFCs, the Torontos? Can they stay on the top of that Eastern Conference?
Not yet, no. I mean, their offseason's been really quiet. I know they had some big targets on their list, and one by one they had to check them off because they weren't coming. They are younger, and they're going to lean a lot on the 3 rookies that they have coming in. And they've made some good trades and decent acquisitions, but this isn't the type of blockbuster offseason that we've seen from Chicago the past 2 years, and I think it puts them behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Losing Accam will definitely hurt them. The move they did make is solidifying that center midfield partnership, re-signing Bastian Schweinsteiger and Dax McCarty. And part of the reason they're in a better position is, as you said, Susanna, they were the big players of last offseason. So in a better spot going in, and Nelson and Pano can be a little bit more patient to make sure they get the right signing.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of the off-season moves for the Chicago Fire team. We've got in Alexander Katai, sort of maybe kind of filling that place for David Accam. Tony Tchani in, but as we mentioned, out. David Accam, Arturo Alvarez. What do we think, Doyle?
Well, Katai is going to be a guy who has to produce. I think maybe even from the first game. He's an inverted winger, plays on the right, cuts in on his stronger left foot and goes to goal. Grant Lillard's an interesting one as well. He's a homegrown central defender who was awesome in college last year. Probably would have been the 2nd or 3rd overall pick. And we've seen good college defenders just walk into the lineup in MLS. Those are the 2 guys. Baquero, an interesting one as well. To me, I thought he was the best player in college last year, but we'll see.
We shall see. All right, for more in the Chicago Fire lineup, let's send it over to Kalen and Bobby standing by the board.
Now, Kalen, we've had to make changes on the fly here. Yesterday, we had John Baquero in the 10 spot. They go out, they make the trade, they get Tony Tchani, and you said he had to be in right away.
Yeah, I think they'll play him right away and move Bastian Schweinsteiger a little bit forward with some freedom to be able to kind of drift wide, play balls down the line, of course, to find Solinak. And then Dax McCarty as well. He's a guy that can find Katai through the other side. And Tony Tchani can be an anchor for them. He can hold down that center of midfield. I think Baquero's a nice option, but not the experience to start off with right away.
And the question is, if you play these 3, and it's what Doyle's going to write about at some point, he's going to say, where's the playmaker? Where's the 10? Where are the chances coming from? And I say they don't need to come from the middle of the field, especially with guys like Schweinsteiger and McCarty who can possess, who can control. They'll manipulate the game and bring the other team here and then hit that long ball to Katai, hit the long ball to someone to spread the field. So I'm okay with having 3 passers and 3 workers in the middle of the field. But Susanna, we would be amiss if we talked about the Chicago Fire without mentioning Nemanja Nikolic.
Nemanja Nikolic, the man responsible for so much of the Chicago Fire's success last year, of course, 2017's Golden Boot winner. And for this guy, no matter what team he is playing on, he just has a knack for finding the back of the net. So how does he do it? Let's hear from the man himself.
Nemanja Nikolic, welcome to Major League Soccer, and tonight's special is Nico Neat. 24 goals, and the boot is very gold.
From 2013 until now, I am the top scorer in every single league where I play. In MLS, it was my 5th time, and I was so happy, like first time when I win in Hungary. Like every striker, before every season, I wanted to win Golden Boot because this is our job. This is why the club pay us. I think every single striker wanted to be first in the end of the season.
Well, there's no denying Nemanja Nikolic.
Chance to equal the club record. And Ante Razov, you have some company.
I'm happy that with my goals, I help Chicago Fire to improve. This second year will be important because we need to play in the same way how we played last year. I believe in myself, I know what I can do, and I know that I can play much better than I played.
Nikolic thinks that he can play much better. I don't know how you top what he did last season. What do we think the over-under for goals in this guy? 17.5?
Yes, it feels about right. And I'm actually going to take the under on that. And not because I think Nikolic is a bad player, but like there aren't a lot of guys in MLS history who have gone for 18 plus goals 2 years in a row. And I am going to write about the lack of a playmaker.
I know you are.
It's
so predictable, Matthew.
So I like Nikolic, but yeah, I'm going to say 15, 16 goals from man.
Can we just say that's a cool stat that he's been the leading goal scorer in every league he's been in?
Every league he's been in.
That was awesome. I hadn't heard that before, but I like that one a lot. Yeah, I'll take the under 2, just because no David Accam. The goals are going to come from more places just because their style is going to change, so under.
I'll take the over easily. I think he's going to be sniffing right around that 20 spot. Can get in behind, penalty kicks, dangerous in the box. I see no reason for him to slow down. I also just liked his attitude. He's like, yeah, I score goals. He's like,
that was awesome.
That's why they pay me the money.
They should show
everywhere I've been, you know.
They should show all 15-year-olds that video.
Yeah.
But shows his mentality.
Prediction time. So we kind of talked about it at the top of this show, but curious to get your thoughts. Is this Chicago Fire team a top 4 team in the East? What do we think?
No, they might not even be a top 6 team.
Oh.
Yeah, I think the East, they're in that mix, but right now there are just too many holes. I mean, even the young guys are hurt. Grant Lillard might not start in week 1, so I think I just have them just outside the playoff picture.
There's 2 or 3 teams down there. We'll talk about all of them today. Red Bulls, Columbus, Chicago. They might make it in, but I'm going to say right now that they don't.
Okay. Kaylin.
You have to judge them based on right now. And they're a playoff team, but not a top 4 seed.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they do go out and make a move during the season to bring in a number 10 or maybe even shore up that back line, whether Christian Dean or Lillard can really establish themselves in that position, then they got a shot.
All right. Let's move on to the Columbus Crew. Now, this was a team went on an exciting playoff run last year, but lost at the hands of the Giants, TFC. They lose some key pieces in the offseason. But, Bobby, you say it's more about the system than the players on the field, particularly with a coach like Greg Berhalter.
Yeah, this is actually the topic, guys, I've been the most excited about. Of all the teams, everything we're going to talk about, this is the most I'm excited. Just because I love talking about the system. Every player has been in a locker room where they look around, they look at the talent, they look at the players there, and they said, man, we're just not playing up to par, or we could be better. We're playing above our talent level, and it's because something like the system. And I'm so fascinated this year to see how much the system actually matters in MLS, because we haven't had a ton over the history of MLS. We haven't had a bunch of people who said, this is our identity, this is our system, and we're going to just bring in pieces to make it work.
And the pieces that went out are pretty good, though. Ola Kamara and Justin Miro. I mean, that's hard to replace.
Yeah, it matters when you lose 30 goals.
Yeah.
That's when the system matters. And Higuain looks up and he's like, where am I going to give this ball to? Now, Gyasi Zardes comes in. I do think he does fit just as far as getting into the box and finishing the action. But they've lost a lot of people. Not even those two, but also Kekuta Mane, I think, will be a big loss. So still more questions than answers for me.
All right, well, let's take a closer look at some of the offseason roster moves for this Crew team. As we mentioned, out Miram, Kamara, Kekuta Mane, but in we've got Gyasi Zardes, which is interesting to me. We also have Valenzuela in there. Bobby, your thoughts on this?
Clearly big names out, Susanna, Kamara, Mane, Miram. But let's talk about some sneaky good signings.
Sneaky good.
Milton Valenzuela, young DP at left back. Zardes, who was at one point a national team mainstay. We know it's in there. We know he has the ability. And Soso had a very good preseason at creating goals. These are guys, and remember, with Berhalter, he doesn't view talent the same way we do. He views talent in the way it fits in to how he wants to build a team. So these guys could be just right for those spots.
All right, well, for more on this Crew lineup, let's send it over to Matt and Kaylin. They're standing by at the board.
Yeah, thanks, Suze. We talk about the system, and what it does better than any other in MLS is generate tap-ins. And that means all the pressure's on Gyasi Zardes, who's had a good year in the past in MLS, but that was a long time ago.
Well, we've talked a lot about preseason form and said for the most part it doesn't matter. I think in this case for Gyasi, it's good to come to a new team and score goals. I think he has 5 of the preseason. Pedro Santos emerged last year, proved that he can really produce in MLS, and then you're always going to have a possession-oriented team here. These outside backs will be able to bomb forward in the attack. Will Trapp, Artur, Higuain, probably the best 3 in center midfield in MLS. That's something to build on.
I'm not sure I'm going to say the best 3, but they're up there, especially if they play like they did at the end of the season. Those guys got to lock it down. The defense has to be better. You know those fullbacks are getting up the field. That's how Columbus Crew play.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about Gyasi Zardes after a long tenure in LA that, honestly never quite saw him reach the potential that we thought we would see from him. Can he be the guy up top for this Crew team? Will the change of scenery benefit him?
When you think about how far he fell, he was playing right back for the Galaxy last year, which is never a good sign. When Gyasi was
I'm the right back of this panel.
When Gyasi Zardes was doing well, he wasn't asked to do too much. He got put into a position in the transition with the Galaxy where he was being asked to create goals, to lead the line, and really when he was with Robbie Keane and Landon Donovan and other players that could combine well with him, you were seeing this. He was just getting on the end of crosses in the box. He has good movement in the box, can finish with his head, finish with his feet. His confidence is a big part of his game. I think the system, as you've mentioned, Bobby, many times, will suit him. I see Gyasi having a big bounce back year.
Killen, you said it, man. You said what he does well. And not enough coaches think about this. And it drives me bonkers when, as fans and as analysts, we look at a guy and say...
Language, bonkers.
Yeah, and say he had a bad game, but sometimes he was put in a position that just didn't fit what he's good at. Gyasi Zardes is very good at certain things, and if he's put in a role to do just those things and to hide the parts of the game he's not good at, he will be a very good player.
What he has been good at occasionally in the past is getting tap-ins, and that's what this team does. And they do it by having those wingers dive inside and occupy the center backs, and having both fullbacks push way up high and occupy the fullbacks. And when you do that, you create gaps that the center forward can hit, ideally in the... I mean, look at the tape we just ran. He scored like 4 goals from inside the 6-yard box just in preseason. That is Columbus. That is how they play. If they're able to do that, Gyasi will have a big year, and this team will have a big year.
Confident. I keep going back to confidence with Gyasi. I saw him.
You're confident in Gyasi.
I am. I saw him play in Hawaii against some of the J League teams in a preseason.
He keeps pointing out that he was in Hawaii.
I know.
I was in Long Island City. Thank you.
Yeah. Long Island City. But he stepped up and took a penalty kick, and you can see the teammates go to celebrate with him when he gets a goal. Coming to a new team, they're putting a lot of trust in him to be able to really build his confidence. And he's just going to play simple. All you need to do, get the ball, hold it up, drop it off to Higuain, advance.
Who scores more this year, Gyasi or Ola?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good prop bet.
Ooh.
Ola.
All right.
All right.
What do you know? You got to answer.
Gyasi.
All right. Prediction time. We would be, remiss not to mention the off-field distractions that this Columbus Crew team have been experiencing with the potential move to Austin. Did not stop them, though, however, from going on a deep playoff run last year. Are they a playoff team? Will these distractions play a part into that? What do you think, Kalen?
I don't think this will bother them at all. We saw last year it actually galvanized the group. This is a team that's been overlooked. Now we're in the same position again. We're going into the preseason. We're all saying, oh, they've lost all these pieces. Nobody's really betting on them again. That's a dangerous position for this Columbus Crew SC team. They moved on from Kai Kamara a couple years ago, reimagined themselves, Ethan Finley, some of the mainstays. So I'm not betting against this team to fall outside the playoffs. I've got them in.
There's obviously a lot going on around the club right now, a lot of questions, but I'm with you. I think that galvanizes them. I think that pulls them together. And I'll also say, selfishly, for this thing called the system, I hope the system succeeds. And I personally, I don't mind admitting that I hope they make the playoffs just as a statement of what it can achieve.
Yeah, I hope nobody was playing a drinking game for every time Bobby said the system.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I have them in. I think they are 100% a playoff team. They've even gone out and gotten an heir apparent for Pipa Higuain so they could save his legs for the stretch run. I like everything about this roster. I do wish they had kept Justin Miram, but other than that, I like Crew SC.
All right, let's move on to DC United, who will be getting a new home this season in Audi Field, but they start off the season on one heck of a road trip. 14 of their first 16 games played away from home. They will not play in DC until July, or at their stadium until July. And after the season that they had last year, this is a team that you hope can only go up from here, but can they survive this massive road trip to start the season?
The odds are stacked against them. We see this every now and again, maybe more often than we should in MLS, where teams have to start and play the first 2 or 3 months on the road. It almost never works out well. It's brutal. I think Kalen's done it a couple times.
Well, I beg to differ because I've done it in MLS. My first year in Chicago, we started the first 9 on the road. We were undefeated in 6. Lost our first match away in Dallas 3-2, but then went on a 6-game unbeaten streak. Then in Houston, went down 2012. I think we played, I wrote it down, 7 on the road. We came away with 8 points. So the trick is you have to treat it as a mini season unto itself. And you're going to change the way you play, probably be a little bit more compact. But you get into a rhythm of, hey, we're on the road again, we're traveling. But it can actually be a good way to start the season. Then when you get home, as we saw with Atlanta United last year, you can get some real energy and get going. So that's the plan for DC.
Given a boon. All right, well, let's take a look at some of the offseason roster moves for this DC United club. Out. Ooh, Bill Hamid. That one stings a little. But when you look at who's in here, the Yamil Assad signing. This one excites me, Kalen.
It does. I mean, Yamil Assad, 7 goals, 13 assists last year. Going to immediately upgrade this attack. But looking at the out, it's hard not to notice Bill Hamid. I mean, he has been the picture standing on his head for DC for so long. In comes David Ousted. I think he'll be a fine replacement. But that back line has had problems in the past. So working with a new goalkeeper is going to be important for them at the start of the year.
All right, well, for more on the DC United lineup, we've got Bobby and Matt standing by at the board.
And Matt, we've been up here for a few days. We've talked about a lot of formations, but it looks like this could be our first 4-1-4-1.
Yeah, and the 4-1-4-1 puts a lot of pressure on the defensive midfielder, which at the start of the season looks like it'll be Junior Moreno, 24-year-old Venezuelan international, has a good pedigree, had some good moments in preseason and some bad moments. But we also might see a 4-2-3-1, and that's been the issue, I think, with DC over the past year. When it was a 4-1-4-1, it was too attacking, too vulnerable at the back. When it was a 4-2-3-1, it was too defensive. They couldn't generate anything. Ben Olsen's got to find that balance.
And the big thing for DC, balance generally comes, Matt, from the middle of the field.
Yep.
It comes from winning that engine room. And if they can win in here, whether it means with these 3, or maybe they go with the 4-2-3-1, they would bring in Segura, they would bring in Harks, they would bring Canals. But the big thing is, they just need to free up these guys to do their work.
Yeah.
The less they can have to do, get the ball, win the ball in here, and free up Areola and Assad to get wide, to wreak havoc, to work hard, is a good sign for them.
Yeah, DC's forwards were not good last year, but the midfield is where the problem was, and it looks like they fixed it.
And I'll put you on the spot. Who's the striker up here?
I think start of the season it'll be Darren Maddox, but I still have a whole bunch of Patrick Mullen stock.
I know, we know you do. Susanna, that's the big question for DC United. Where do the goals come from?
Where do the goals come from? That's an excellent question, Bobby, because this is a DC team who had the worst goal differential in the league last year. They were tied with Colorado for the least amount of goals scored. So, Kalen, who's putting the ball in the back of the net for DC?
It's going to be done by committee. It's not going to be a Nemanja Nikolic situation or David Villa, Valeri, or one of these guys that you can really funnel the ball to. It's going to be guys like this: Areola chipping in goals, Assad, Darren Maddox, Acosta, set pieces, Birnbaum getting forward. They're going to need to do it, but the good thing is they've made the moves to actually give themselves a chance. You know, before it was all on Patrick Mullins. When he did well, the team did well. When they didn't do well, it was another story. So now a lot more diversity in the attack. Ben Olsen did a good job going out in the offseason and showing some ambition to get a guy like Assad, who I think is really going to help this team.
Kalen, as a striker, is it possible to do it as committee? Isn't it hard to build? I would have thought it would be hard to build confidence, get into a flow. Doesn't that bother you if you're the striker up there getting rotated and saying, oh yeah, we'll get a couple goals here and there?
I've played on teams like this. Houston Dynamo went to 2 championships without over 12 goal scorer. Will Bruin, Brian Ching, some of these guys leading the line. So it can be done. It's just the identity needs to adapt with the team.
The identity comes out of the midfield. I'm way less worried about who gets goals for this team than who stops them, because they were a disaster without Bill Hamid last year, and that backline did not play well at all.
All right, prediction time. We saw how good this team could look at the end of the 2016 season, and then we saw what they looked like for the entirety of the 2017 season. So which DC United team do we get?
To contextualize it, in the final 13 games of the 2016 season, they scored 33 goals, which is 2.5 goals per game, which is a rate that nobody's ever done over the course of a full season in MLS. In all of 2017, they scored 31 goals. They were terrible last year. They will be much better in attack. I do think they will be slightly better in defense, and that will get them nowhere near the playoffs. This is not a playoff team.
Yeah, major step forward as an organization, but still out of the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm outside the playoffs, but excited for the new stadium and finally DC taking place back into a relevant team in MLS.
There we go. All right, that is going to do it for us. A reminder, guys, join MLS Fantasy. Go to MLSsoccer.com/fantasy. Join a team. Also download that MLS app. You can do that on the App Store and Google Play. Join us this weekend for Match Day Central on Saturday and Sunday. We will all be here bringing you all the content, highlights, analysis, all that good stuff. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, our final preview show. It's all over. We've had a blast doing this. And guys, remember, dress for MLS tomorrow. We're going to be kitted out. You should be too. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you real soon.